Hey everybody, welcome to Balticon 55. It is time for Imaginary Creatures, Real Biology. I'm your mod today. I'm Jeanne Adams, and I write paranormal romantic suspense, urban fantasy, and space adventure. And I would like my panelists of this wonderful panel to introduce themselves. And I will start with Seanan.
Hello, I'm Seanan McGuire. I write the Encrypted series of urban fantasy books, which are based on ridiculously thorough interrogation of real-world biology as applied to ridiculous creatures running around a fantasy landscape. I went to the University of California, Berkeley, go Bears, as a dual major in folklore and herpetology, which basically primes you to spend far too much time thinking obsessively about the biological realities of ridiculous beings.
There's no better panelist for this. John?
Hi, I'm John L. French. I'm a retired crime scene investigator with over 40 years experience with the Baltimore City Police Department. I am now a full-time layabout. I'm full-time layabout and part-time writer. And my experience with cryptid and imaginary creatures mostly started thanks to our other panelist, Danielle, who talked me into writing the beginning novella for Systema Paradoxa.
All right, well, that's just a perfect transition to ask Danielle to introduce herself.
Danielle Ackley-McPhail, author, editor, publisher. We've newly created the Neo Paradoxa imprint for eSpec Books, which publishes the Systema Paradoxa novellas created in conjunction with Cryptid Crate, featured in quarterly boxes in their monthly subscription service.
All right, all of you on participants, that's where you need to go if you want cryptids. Tom.
Hi, yes, I'm Dr. Tomholtz at the University of Maryland. I am a professional dragon necromancer because I bring giant reptile creatures back to life. I am a dinosaur paleontologist, and instead of holding up a new book, I've got page proofs from an article that comes out in hopefully next week or the very near future. Let's see. And Lisa just pointed out, I do have a presentation tomorrow,
which is fascinating. If y'all get to see it.
So yeah, what journal? It's a journal of the Canadian Journal of Earth Sciences. And let me just quickly put my Twitter and web page here.
We can do that at the end. I was going to ask y'all to do that. Yeah, so obviously this panel is about cryptids and imaginary creatures. And one of the big questions is, if these creatures were real, what would our world look like? Mm-hmm. And obviously we all kind of want a dragon in the garden, but it would start singeing the shingles. Yeah, a little bit of a problem. So Seanan, what do you think? I mean, what would our world look like if some of these imaginary creatures were real?
And it completely depends not only on the imaginary creature in question, but on the interpretation of the magical creature that you're deciding to call out of things. If Disney's mermaids were real, I don't think anything would materially change.
Right.
They're friendly, happy people who build their kingdoms at the bottom of the ocean and don't mess with humans. If my mermaids were real, I think that cruise ships would be a lot more exciting, and I would probably actually go on one to watch everyone die. It's sort of like the question of if you could bring back dinosaurs. Right. You know, if you could bring back velociraptors, they're the size of turkeys. I am concerned about a flock of velociraptors. Even bitey little bastard turkeys are not going to be more dangerous to me than the pack of coyotes that comes through my backyard on a regular basis. Right. On the other hand, if you want to bring back the Australorpinator, we've got a problem now, because that is a raptor-type dinosaur the size of a Greyhound bus.
which fence lines are not going to stop.
No.
What do you think, Tom? Dinosaurs are your specialty, and dragon breathing and whispering.
Yeah, exactly. So bringing back dinosaurs. Although there have been a number of movies, obscure art films about this topic. Human beings are really, really, really amazingly good at taking down large animals. We've been doing it for over 40,000 years. And so that wouldn't be a problem, so much. Maybe on an individual basis, sure, but a concerted effort, we could get rid of them. On the other hand, hyper intelligent, magical, fire breathing creatures that, may have grudges that last centuries, those we might have a lot more problem with.
Certainly our architecture would be different.
Oh, yeah.
As Seanan says, turkey-sized ones, yeah, this standard architecture is going to apply.
Mm-hmm.
Large scale creatures, maybe not.
Yeah.
John, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, if these kind of creatures actually existed, we would not be having this panel. But actually, I think there would be some changes. Certain parts of the country would be, might be of necessity a nature preserve. Large parts of Frederick County would be off limits because of the snallygasters and the Dueo. I'm not so sure about, people would be going on boat trips, as they say, to go see now they go see the dolphins or to swim with the dolphins, and then they'd be going to be tourists to go be swimming with Chessie in the Chesapeake Bay, or Loch Ness would be a lot more popular than it is. We'd have a lot more, humans being humans, we'd have a lot more dietary choices. We would eat them.
When they weren't eating us, yeah.
Well, yeah, when they weren't eating us. And then there would be, you would have, the zoos would be a lot more interesting. We're humans, we're predators, we're, we're unkind to a lot of species. And I think it would just be a lot more things for people to eat and hunt. Teddy Roosevelt was supposedly planning a snallygaster hunt when people started citing them in the 1920s and 30s.
It's interesting. I think our settlement patterns would probably be different from early on, given certain regions of the country. Danielle, what's your thoughts on how things would be different?
I think we would see a lot more of those videos like you do now, where the moose and the bear end up in somebody's backyard, only it's going to be a lot more destructive.
Yeah, say goodbye to the garage.
I think, John, your comment that zoos would be more interesting, we forget humans are so bad at novelty. Humans are just intensely bad at novelty. Zoos would have more variety, but we would lose interest very quickly. The only thing Jurassic World got right was that people would get tired of looking at the dinosaurs after they had been for a little while. You used to literally make a living by being a person that had a lion in the back of a wagon, because people would pay the at the time equivalent of $10 each just to come and look at your lion. And now a zoo with a dozen lions is not doing very well.
Right.
So we would lose interest so quickly if we had proof that these creatures existed and could lock them up. I think the Disney movie Onward may be the most realistic depiction of living in concert with fantasy animals. The unicorns are in the trash again.
Yeah.
We're just going to hit them with a broom. We want them to leave.
Right. Well, and, I think that's one of the things that would change is our wonder about these creatures right now is part of the allure of them. Is Nessie real? Is Chessie real? And that sense of wonder is part of it. But if they were part of the constant landscape, you're right, Sean, and I think we'd be like, I need some, snaggle thingies traps to get rid of them. So one of the questions from the audience is, if it was possible to domesticate and bond with one, what dinosaur would you like as a companion? Danielle?
Wouldn't be a copy. See, right now we have animals that we've domesticated, but they don't forget that wild time, and there's so many dangerous situations that occur because we don't respect what that animal was. So I don't think it would be a good idea to try and domesticate these. I think something like Nessie maybe would be pretty cool, just because it's depicted as a very mild-mannered creature.
Right.
but I wouldn't be going swimming with her.
Yeah. What do you think, Tom?
Well, if the question there is, what dragon would we like as a companion? If I could actually bond with it and domesticate it, well, then of course T-Rex. If you're going to bond with something, you want the king. Especially, as a little kid, to have the biggest, toughest friend around. But realistically, you don't want something that's too big and too messy and so forth. So a Hypsilophodont or Thescalosaurid, which are the ultra boring herbivorous dinosaurs that never get onto TV shows or have plastic toys made out of them, would probably be a lot more useful because, they would be more manageable.
They'd mow the lawn.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Shauna, what do you think?
So it depends on, are we talking real domestication or taming? If they're domesticated, we're going to have lost some attributes of the wild species, but they will also be, there's a difference between a pet crow that has decided to live with you and a chicken that has genuinely been domesticated and shaped by centuries of breeding. We kind of
think she's frozen.
Yeah. Hopefully she'll be back in a moment.
Hopefully. Because I was very interested in what you were saying.
Well, another points out that a chicken took offense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another interesting question in the queue is, the tourism and predation makes sense for beasts, but what about sentient creatures, and would we prey on them as well, and would it be mutual predation? If you think about the way we all portray dragons, I would suspect that it would be mutual predation. Right. Dragons would eat us, we would eat them if we catch it.
That's part of the plot. My plot in my my cryptid novella, When the Moon Shines, set in the 20s during Prohibition. We have snallygasters, which are essentially flying lizards mixed with birds, and Dueo, think werewolves, but they don't turn back into humans, and they are sentient. They hunt man as well. They hunt humanity as well as much as humanity hunts them, and they are better at it.
Right. Well, they've got
so we would have to be sharing until we decided to wipe them out. We would have to be sharing our space with with these self-aware creatures. And Jeannie, I think you said something about our the settlement, the indigenous people, the indigenous Americans who were here when the Europeans showed up. They would have already learned how to live in I don't know if harmony is the right word, but to
in concert.
In concert, thank you.
With some kind of balance, yeah.
Yes, with cryptids like Sasquatch and snallygaster and something like that. And when the Europeans came over, they would have, the natives would have stronger allies on which to depend, and they and certain areas would be it's nice and all that, but I don't really want this large flying thing picking off my cattle,
or my children,
or my children on a regular basis. And I'm not so sure those hex signs that the Amish gave me are gonna work.
Right.
Nice place to visit, wouldn't want to live there.
Right. Exactly.
I think that as a species and society, we have shown a disregard for the other that would quickly get us in trouble with a sentience that is completely outside of our structure. We would not respect it. We would not understand it. And there would be conflict whether they sought it out or not, just because we would blunder, basically.
Well, I think that would be true if we started with the premise that our world started the way it is now, and then they appeared. If we
Mhm.
came up with them from the very beginning, I think all of our religions would be different. All of
Yeah,
our
yeah.
traditions would be different. I mean,
Yes.
Christmas with the dinosaurs would be completely different. And
Mhm.
Christmas might not exist. I mean, it just depends on what point in time you decide to add them back into the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question earlier about, the degree of sentience. That's going to make a huge scale here. And what type of sentience? I mean, depending upon the mythos, depending upon whatever, if dragons are just really clever beasts, or are they smarter and more cunning than any human?
Right.
That'd be a whole world of difference. And would there be peoples or entities that might be favorable in alliances with us? That would have a very, very different sort of society than if everything's against us.
Right. Right. And it
and
would
then-
be
yeah.
a major predation. If we've started the civilization with major predation, our world will look completely different.
Mhm.
And
Welcome back, Sean.
hello, Sean.
Thank you.
Shauna, you mentioned the different kinds of mermaids that, if they existed, what it would be like.
Mhm.
If there were sentient, water-dwelling, water-breathing people, creatures, what have you, they would have long ago taken offense to the stuff we're dumping in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
I read comic books, and one of the reoccurring themes, both with Marvel's version of Atlantis and DC's version of Atlantis, is you've got to stop dumping your trash in our ocean.
Right. Yeah. Shauna, did you want to finish your point about crows versus chickens?
Basically, crows are not domesticated. They can be tamed on an individual basis. A domestic chicken is something very different. And chickens are still terrifying little raptors. They eat meat, kick each other to death, like they are a horror show of just happy barnyard poultry. But they do care about people because they're domesticated and they've been bred to care about us. If we had domesticated dinosaurs, I would actually want a Deinonychus, which is the most stereotypical thing for someone who grew up on Jurassic Park to want. But I love the raptor types. I love the fact that they are fast, screw you up dinosaurs. And they probably could not digest mammalian flesh just because of the timing of things evolving. They wouldn't necessarily recognize me as food.
Actually, they would have been eating plenty of mammals. Velociraptor
Really?
in particular. Oh yeah, sure. There are plenty of mammals. Remember, mammals first appear at the same time as the first dinosaurs, and the vast majority of mammalian history occurred in the shadow of the dinosaurs. And so there are things like Salamdolestids and so forth, which are fairly common animals in the same environment as Velociraptor, for instance.
Nice.
So yeah. But we're big, so at least that's something. And so, for a Deinonychus or a Velociraptor, we might
I
be able
wouldn't want a
to.
raptor. They're too small. I don't want to drop.
Actually, I don't know exactly what type of cryptid or dinosaur, or whatever, I would want as a pet. It would depend on how docile it is, and there's a size factor. I've had 3 dogs over the last 40 years, and I have cleaned my yard up a lot. So I would not really want a large sized dinosaur in my messing up my backyard, so that, I would need a shovel to clean my backyard.
Well, there is always that, the byproducts of having a large species. Well, one of the things too that was sort of in our program questioning was, what are some of the potential disease vectors that these reptiloids and felinoids, if people were dealing that, or fae or any kind, might either send to us or we might send to them? Danielle,
Right.
have you played with that at all?
Not in my fiction, no. But it would be. I really haven't thought about that at all. I'm sorry.
Well, Seanan, you've your degree in herpetology. Did you is there something there that would be an interesting thought process about disease, cross barrier disease? And
So the fun thing about diseases is that they don't care. We
right,
have literally had spillover diseases from every form of life on this planet that shares any kind of respiration with us. There are some plant diseases that have successfully infected humans, although they have, for the most part, not managed to go to human transmission. And there's always the aspect that we can't super go into because this is a family-friendly panel. It is still daylight, but there is the aspect of the sheer number of diseases humanity has discovered, because humanity, especially the cis male part of humanity, really likes to copulate with things that we find. Like, we didn't have a problem with syphilis until Europeans got to certain areas and decided I should put my genitals inside a llama. That's a great plan. So I think the venereal diseases we would pick up would be astonishing. And we know from history that doesn't even require intelligence.
yes,
Like,
that's true.
we don't need mermaids to be smart. We know from ship's records that Christopher Columbus had carnal knowledge of a manatee.
Ew.
So if mermaids existed and they looked even remotely like the lovely ladies of the sea, if there were any monarchian mimicry going on there, sailors would absolutely have banged mermaids, even if the mermaids were 100% not consenting.
Yes.
Literal crabs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crabs.
Somebody posted it would be even worse if it was backed by fey magic, and something that came across, and somebody put in the chat the fairy clap. So.
Yeah, I think that if we start taking magic and trying to add it to the epidemiology and biology, we have just completely deserted the science.
Yes.
And probably wiped out the human race.
Wiping out the human race is so easy.
Yes,
Apparently.
as we've discovered.
As we were discovering.
Actually,
yes.
I think if we're talking about just, I think given the fact that these creatures, whatever, the creatures that we regard as cryptid or mythological, if they really existed, I think, over the years, yes, there would still be some disease transmission, but over the years, like everything, we would have developed immunity to a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, we're a hardy species, that's for sure. So another question from the group is, what real world creature would you nominate as probably actually a cryptid that someone snuck into our reality on a technicality? I say platypi, first of all.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I say fall with question.
Okay.
A cryptid is literally just a creature whose existence has not been verified by science.
There you go.
Things that have officially been deemed extinct become cryptids because the existence of a living one is cryptid.
Right.
So
right.
Is there anything that you look at and go, this is biologically unlikely, this shouldn't be here? I can find you one of those in every single animal subtype.
Well,
the Komodo
like
dragon
what?
is ridiculous.
What are?
The Komodo dragon reproduces parthenogenically and sexually. The children of a female Komodo dragon are genetically distinct enough from that female to reproduce with her without causing any DNA degradation. They can swim up to 20 miles and we didn't know they were venomous for years because they are so filthy that when they bit things, we thought they were dying of sepsis. They were dying of venom.
Ah, there you go.
I'm actually part of the case study finding that out, because it turns out that rattlesnake antivenom is cross-reactive with Komodo dragon venom for no apparent reason. And I had been bitten by a Komodo dragon 3 days after I had received rattlesnake antivenom. So it was a whole thing. There is no way this thing exists. It's not real, and yet here it is. And how are we not ass deep in them? I don't know.
I think James Prego on the chat actually chose my example is turtles. If we say that turtles are foreign to our universe or our reality. That simplifies our understanding of the evolutionary relationships of reptiles so much, because turtles are the big problem today. And in fact, in my vert paleo seminar as a grad student, my solution was they came from space. And that was the simplest solution, because everything else makes sense then among reptiles. But turtles are weird. I mean, they are the one group of animals whose shoulder girdles are inside their rib cage. They're pretty freaky and weird.
What do you think, Danielle?
I was saying the platypus, so it's bumblebees.
Yeah, they are
Shouldn't be
very
able to
odd.
fly.
And they're so odd in their structure and their wingspans and their, yeah. What do you think,
And-
John? Oh, sorry,
Well-
Daniel, go ahead.
And the mantis certainly doesn't look like it came from here.
That's true. What do you think, John?
Well, for those of you who are not from the Maryland area, we are currently experiencing our 17, we're at the Brood X, which occurs once every 17 years. The cicadas are here, and they are kind of weird creatures. But Maryland also has the Frankenfish, which basically is a strange-looking fish that actually has the ability to walk from one body of water to the other if it's not too far.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which
Maryland's
again
got
would be one of those things where you're like, that can't possibly be real.
right. That's the sort of thing that if you've been out drinking and you kind of stumble across it either in twilight or early morning, and you see this fish going from one pond to the other, you're going to go, I've had enough.
Yeah, okay, cut off. You are
Yeah.
cut off.
Plus, I have to say this, Danielle, who has a habit of doing this, has talked me into doing a novella about Maryland's favorite cryptid, Chessie. And the more I read, the more I'm convinced that there's something in that Chesapeake Bay.
There you go. Okay, so one of the questions takes us back to dragons, which is always one of my favorite subjects. Are there any biological examples that support the dragon's ability to breathe fire? Obviously, with poison-spitting cobras, there's some projectile ability, but what do you think, Danielle?
I think it would come more out of acid rather than fire.
Right.
And just the effect of it burning and impacting on something would give the impression that it was fire.
Yeah.
The context under which it's spitting, if it is flammable, could give
Right.
that impression.
Right. I think that's very plausible. Tom?
Yeah, and Kimberly in the chat pointed this out right when I was thinking about it as well. Yeah, bombardier beetles. So it's not spitting, it's the other end, but they have a combination of chemicals that when they mix produce a caustic blast. And indeed, there have been people who've done sort of like science-ified dragons that have used that as examples. And in an entirely different sort of fantasy universe, that is creationists, they have proposed that that's what dragons were, is that they were actually the hollow-crested duckbill dinosaurs, but they were actually like bombardier beetles, and they were holding solutions in their noses and putting the fluids out there to breathe fire. So I'll give them credit. That was creative.
Which Caustic Blast sounds like a great name for a rock band.
Oh, it does, yes.
Yeah, no, I was also on the bombardier beetles. People have been trying to solve the question of, can we work our way around to fire breathing for years? Because
Yeah.
it's such a classic, iconic thing that everyone kind of wants to be the one to crack. And when I say everyone, I mean biologists and biology grad students and people who should not be trusted near a CRISPR machine. It's a thing. There are caustic chemicals that the body can produce, and some of them can ignite under the right circumstances. I personally don't think it's possible to evolve fire breathing, if only because there are no fire breathing creatures in Australia.
Yeah.
And basically, if something is deadly bullshit, it should be in Australia for me to accept it anywhere else.
John, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to agree with Shannon and everybody else. I don't think there's, I mean, yeah, we could probably come up with a way of how do dragons breathe fire. I think there was a book a couple, maybe 20 years ago, which said that they flew because they were full of hydrogen and the fire and the flames came from them burning hydrogen off. I forget what that book was, but
It's called The Flight of Dragons.
right.
I got it the same birthday. I got a copy of that and The Dragon and the George by Gordy Dixon. And the other one was by Peter Dickinson, I think, or something like that. They have names that are very similar.
On a sidebar, why hasn't anybody made a movie of Anne McCaffrey's dragon novels?
Yeah, too much CGI, I think.
The folks who did I believe the folks who did the Battlestar Galactica remake initially were pitching a Dragon Riders series. They discovered they couldn't do it, so they said, let's go to a different property that we remembered as kids. Let's get Galactica, and at least for several seasons, did a really good job with it.
Let's see here. I'm trying to get to some of the questions that I think are key to what we're doing. What is a lesser known or not quite as famous imaginary or mythical creature that you would be excited to see exist in our world and possibly interact with? Shauna?
I want the thylacine back. I am a one-issue voter, and my vote goes to give me. If we are requiring fictional things, I would actually love jackalopes. I think that jackalopes are unmenacing enough that we would probably survive. My best friend would like it if I said Mothman, because loves Mothman so incredibly much. Mothman is her favorite. I don't want the Fae to be real. Folklore is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's not have those.
Yes.
You know, and just so much of what I research is horrifying. You know, I don't want the Bidi Taranahazu. Those are basically the Australian basilisk, and they hate you.
Yeah. Just from the get-go.
Just from the get-go, they just hate you.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of those you wouldn't want to see come open.
Yeah, cactus cats would be nice. I'd like to see something that bridges the mammal-vegetable divide.
Okay.
Because then we have
Danielle?
so many more spillover diseases.
The wonk.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Pardon?
The wonk.
And what is
I
a
want
wonk?
to be the one to prove it's true.
What is it? What is it?
It is a creature that no one has actually seen, because when someone comes nearby, it digs a hole and disappears and pulls the hole over top of itself.
Okay.
But it said that it can appear as anything, so it could look like your best friend or a tree or whatever, but very mild-mannered creature.
So you would like to meet one. Okay, John?
Okay, Jeanne mentioned the jackalope. Way back when America's Funniest Videos first started, they had a companion series called America's Funniest People. And one of the hosts was Arlene Sorkin, who is best known for the original voice of Harley Quinn. But they used to do brief videos on that about the jackalope. And that was my favorite part of the show. Fast as fast can be, you'll never catch me. You know, so I'll go with the jackalope. Most of the cryptids, I've been editing and so reading a lot of the Systema Paradoxa cryptid stories, and I really don't want to meet any of them.
Somebody in the chat posted hoop snakes, and yes, I have love for unicorns, so that the unicorns will get their love. But Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say hoop snakes, and then they posted that. Yeah, because that thing is relatively harmless, so that would be cool to see them like as they're rolling down. So, you know, a lot of and given that almost all other like cryptid snakes, you know, are super deadly, this would be one that's actually not so bad.
Yeah. But what is there one that you would like to have as pet?
As a pet, I know plenty that I don't, you know, basilisks, you know, oh, what a good, you know, you get to pet them once and then you're gone. But
Toast.
If we're talking pets, I want a foo dog.
Ooh,
Well, that's a good one.
yeah, there's a good one.
Yeah. Somebody posted in the chat a phoenix would be fun because you never lose it.
That's
Always
true.
it's going to be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
but
can
you'd
make
have
s'mores
to,
whenever you want.
but your fire insurance would be through the roof.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Early on in the chat, there was something about the difficulty of insurance if all of these creatures were real.
That's, yeah.
Is there one though that you would have as a pet, Tom? Did you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of a good one for a pet as such.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have to, if one comes to mind, I will, because so many of them are so dangerous. That's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, dragon in the backyard means singed ceilings. So
At the least.
at the very least, yeah. So one of the questions from the group is, it makes a lot of sense that most cryptids, if they existed, would not change our world much more than lions do. But what about creatures that fill niches that are currently empty? For example, we can ride horses, but there are no flying creatures large enough for us to ride. What are some imaginary creatures that would change our world by doing something no existing creatures can? A la flying dragons or flying horses, or our world would look very different if we had achieved flight a lot sooner and organically.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I would love a griffin.
I'm with you.
Yep.
Brian or Stewie? But I think we'd been able to domesticate such creatures as dragons, or is the plural of Pegasus Pegasi?
No idea.
Okay, but if we could if there were flying creatures that could support our weight and we could domesticate them, would there have been a need for airplanes?
No.
And especially if we had legs like the Rock. There's something where instead of just individuals, you could major cargo, hauling of cargo, or the equivalent of a jumbo jet. So yeah, commerce and communication and all that would have changed radically. We would have had a jet set world in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Sean?
I kind of feel like this is taking us into hard furry-con territory because no, seriously, I'm a part of the furry community. They're wonderful, but we have whole panels about how chairs work.
No,
Because you design a chair when people have tails.
Right.
And having these creatures around, it is going to literally change the entire way society is constructed. If unicorns can actually purify water,
Mm-hmm.
the building blocks for my Encrypted series was that some of the monster hunters broke away from the organization that said kill everything unnatural, because when the last unicorn in France was killed, there was immediately a giant cholera outbreak that killed hundreds of people. And that is actually supported by real history. There is a record of a unicorn's horn, which was probably a narwhal tusk, being presented to the King of France. It is the last unicorn horn on record presented to the King of France, and it's presented 1 year before the first big French cholera outbreak. So what does medicine look like in a world where we have caladrius birds and unicorns? Do humans actually know how to take care of themselves, or do we depend entirely on these cryptid creatures?
Right. And one of the questions that's in the setup for this panel is, where do these creatures fall in the taxonomic structure? Where are they in the genus and species and phylums, and where do they fall? So, obviously we can predicate the thoughts of dragons on the lizard kingdom, and we can predicate unicorns with horses, but some of these others don't fall neatly into any category.
Well, the issue here, modern classification is ultimately evolutionary. And things belong to a group because of patterns of common ancestry. And Linnaeus was picking up on that without an evolutionary context, but that's because the universe we live in is one with evolution. If these things don't actually have evolutionary connections to anything else, if they are the products of, if the world is operating in some rather different fashion, then any sort of system could be equally arbitrary. You could fit it however you want and do it like a medieval bestiary,
Right.
If you don't actually have a a common descent with anything else, it would be, you know, its own classification, its own little category out, separate from everything else.
Right. Turtles,
Oh.
platypi.
Yeah.
A lot of the cryptid theories draw on multi-dimensional beings. And so we could be looking at something that doesn't fit in any of our classifications because it's working on a different system from a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Shauna?
I think I literally spend hours working out the taxonomy and evolution of cryptid creatures. You know, I've built an entire series on it.
Yeah.
And talking to biologists to figure out how far am I going past the lines.
Right.
Because biology is so much weirder than people think it is. Do you know what makes a mammal?
Right.
There are only 3 attributes you need to have to be a mammal as we currently understand it. Do you know what those 3 attributes are?
Milk
live-
giving,
live
live
birth.
young.
No.
No?
Okay,
There
I'm
are
gonna have to do this. It's not based on attributes. There's one thing that you need to be a mammal in modern biology. You are a descendant of the most recent common ancestor of Monotremata, Placentalia, or Marsupialia, and that's it.
That is that is true.
Yeah, so we could diagnose it based on a number of different traits, but your membership of a group in modern classification is on patterns of common ancestry. That was the big change of the late 20th century.
Yep, that happened after I had graduated and I didn't go into biology, so I still have trouble adapting to that.
Fair
But
enough.
there are 3 common attributes of all known mammals, and they don't correspond with what most people think those common attributes will be.
So why don't you tell us what they are?
Hair, capable of lactating in some way, 3 small bones in the inner ear.
And now here's a cool thing. The 3 small bones in the inner ear turns out to be convergent between monotremes and the placental marsupial group.
Yes.
It turns out that the common ancestor of all those groups still had a bony connection with those bones in the lower jaw, and that the separation occurred independently. And if it weren't for the fossil record of mammals, that's really greatly increased, of Mesozoic mammals, it's really greatly increased in the last couple decades. We wouldn't have known that. This actually is one of the cases I love to use because it shows why the fossil record gives us information that if we just had modern animals, we would actually get wrong.
Well, it's interesting. Somebody just said nobody expects the 3 small bones in the ear.
Yep, that's true.
And unfortunately, this has been absolutely fascinating. And unfortunately, I could not get to all the questions. And we are running very, very close on time. So I just want to make sure that we get a chance to have everybody talk for a few minutes about, tell us where we can find you on the web and where you'll be for the rest of the con. And I want to give a chance to do that. So why don't we start with you, John?
Hey, my latest book is Systema Paradoxa Volume 1, When the Moon Shines. I will be reading from that tonight at 7. I have posted my link to my Amazon authors page in the chat, which you can save. Those 3 little dots at the bottom right will allow you to save this chat and all the others. Tomorrow, I think it's at 4. I will be talking about monsters, and then at 7, probably the most controversial panel at the Balticon, the theatrical cut of JLA versus the Snyder cut. And God help me for my sin.
Controversial.
And God help me for my sins. I am the moderator.
Oh Lord.
Pray for me.
Shauna?
I am all over the convention. It's kind of hard to miss me. If you can spell my name, you can find me. Every other Seanan McGuire I know is currently a sheep farmer in Ireland. So, I mean, they're mostly related to me, but they're not super active on the internet. So if you can Google my name, you can locate me, and I am all over the convention. If you want to ask me questions, we are doing a fairly it's historically popular, fairly fun panel tomorrow called Ask Me Anything. And that is usually called In Conversation. And it's basically ask me literally anything and I will answer you. But if you ask me something that requires research, like what is the airspeed of a laden swallow, I will bullshit you.
I think we're also all going to be in Water Table right after this. So on the Discord. Danielle, where can we find you?
My website is currently under reconstruction, but all of my titles are available on Amazon and via the eSpec site, which I posted in the chat. And you can literally find me anywhere as Danielle Ackley-McPhail because there is no other.
Which is always an enviable place to be when your name is Adams. Tom?
So yeah, I've got my annual Dinosaurs the Update tomorrow at 4. It's going to be a shortened version. It's just the 50 minutes.
No,
I know. So I've had to cut stuff back. I'm also doing on 1 o'clock on I do Charles Darwin and the fossil record. So how Darwin was actually a great discoverer of fossils, as well as, of course, one of the most influential biologists of all time. And I posted earlier in chat my my Twitter handle, so you can find that
excellent. Excellent, excellent. Somebody posted in the chat that they would like to agree with you loudly and consistently for hours on end. Sean, several people want to buy you drinks and have more time to ask you anything. So your panel tomorrow will be quite popular, I'm sure.
Well, the buying drinks is they want to watch me and Tom at a bar arguing with each other.
There we go.
I love being corrected by people who actually know more than me, which is not usually the circumstance. It's usually someone correcting you when they don't know more than you.
Yes,
And hence the internet.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, we didn't stray very far from our mandate from the description. Thank you so very much, all of you, for joining me, and join us on Discord if you have time at Water Table afterwards. I'm Jeanne Adams, your moderator, and I'll look forward to seeing you around the con.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Cool.
I think we are out. Yes, we are.
You're out.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
That was
Thank you, Jeannie. Did a good
That was
job.
fun.
Good moderating.
Thank you.